late morning of the 26th, 1777, the heavily outnumbered Americans were set to make their stand against the pursuing British behemoth. The tactically retreating forces from the earlier actions combined with Sterling's line on the west side of the creek in the ash swamp of Scotch Plains. The terrain was ideal for Sterling's plan to delay Cornwallis and Howe from reaching the main continental force of 5,000 heading into the Watchung Mountains. Most of the swamp had dried in the brutal heat of that June. Though the river branch was low and crossing the water would not be much of a problem for the British, the ground was uneven and hard as a rock. Extensive brush and tree cover along the river, as well as thirsty streams, high banks, formed the natural ditch abatement. Sterling could exploit this terrain, mounting nests of cannons from which grape shot could effectively be unleashed upon the approaching British lines. Sterling's synergy of gun placement and favorable terrain would negate any attempt at a bayonet charge by the Redcoats, thus hindering use by the British of their superior numbers until they could form lines with the better part of their expedition. At this point, the British had already been marching well over 10 hours, which half of that time was under cruel hot sun, as recorded on the 26th. It would take Cornwallis 2 hours of heavy fighting to bring enough troops up into the ash swamp to dislodge the Continentals. Several waves of British and Hessians marched on the highly defensible American line. Concentrated grape shot along with trained rifle and spirited musket fire repeatedly turned the exhausted lines of Howe's great army back. By the time the majority of his two 8,000-man columns reached the ash swamp, Sterling knew he was close to meeting his objective, granting Washington the time to preserve most of his army, but this action was far from over, and danger grew for his men, with every enemy unit flooding the dry ash swamp. With near the whole force ready to descend upon his line, Sterling, Conway, and Maxwell would have to find a way to usher the majority of their 2,000-strong force to safety. Washington did get about 5,000 into the mountains, but Sterling's 2,200 was near a third of the entire Continental Army. Surrender, capture, or heavy losses were not viable options for any extension of the American cause. We are not sure if the ranking officer Sterling discussed with Maxwell and Conway in preparation or made a decision in the heat of the battle, but he determined that 500 men and 3 cannon would be an acceptable risk to afford the other retinue of 1,500 separation and enough time to rendezvous with Washington in the heights above the Elizabethtown track. A position on the right flank would be commanded by Sterling himself. This point would work as a pivot for his retreating force following the route of Washington's supply lines through Westfield. This was the last chance for the Continentals to turn and not be cut off from the rest of the army by Howe's monstrous 16,000. With the best America had to offer in 1777, the plan was to hold until the colonials could make their way up to the foot of the natural Watchung Citadel. We surmise approximately 45 minutes before springing the Patriots' escape, Sterling ordered a battery placed atop a hill where Westfield Ave and Rahway Ave meet near the border of Westfield at the time. The 2 elite units joined a regiment of New Jersey Blues at this crucial moment. Morgan's riflemen under Colonel Dark and Maxwell with his elite regiment of light infantry. This put 2 of Washington's finest generals and America's first 2 special forces unit at supreme danger. The stakes were that high. This would be a do-or-die moment for the young nation. There was more to the decision than merely having the best warriors make it this stand. Both Maxwell and Morgan's units lived off the land and moved independently from the main army, meaning, if successful in delaying the British long enough for their countrymen to escape, these fighters could flee in companies via any available route. Then once safely away, the stealthy warriors could bide their time, avoid the British, then rejoin at a predetermined location. After 2 hours of intense fighting at the ash swamp, Sterling ordered his retreat. Sterling led his troops well and we believe set in motion the best possible plan for survival. Though the terrain would briefly slow the initial British pursuit, once over the natural abatement, thousands quickly moved on the also tired Continentals. General Conway commanded an orderly retreat past Sterling's battery. Because of the last action of this historic battle, Conway would continue marching his men up Mountain Ave, turning them, and then up New Providence Road in the narrowest of escapes. Just behind Conway were the first Redcoats to reach Sterling and Maxwell. A vanguard of over 2,000 attempted a charge to dislodge the scrappy Americans. 500 repelled them with ease. As more of the King's men reached the field, a second charge was attempted, this time including Ferguson's men and their new rifles to support the infantry with accurate fire. The elite Americans repelled the second charge, as well as a third charge before abandoning 3 cannon and joining the retreat just before 3 p.m. The British by this point were either unable or unwilling to give chase after marching and fighting over 12 hours, mostly in the hot sun. Sterling's 500 were able to join Washington and the rest of the Continentals quickly, unfollowed by Howe's expeditionary force. Late in the afternoon, Howe assessed the rebel lines and fortifications in the Watchung Mountains. He deemed them too strong to attack and the force too large to leave off his right flank in a march towards Philadelphia. The result was a tactical and hollow victory for Howe, while Washington and his men won a strategic victory that would change the entire direction of the war. Hessians and Loyalists entered Westfield ahead of Cornwallis on a mission of retribution. Later joined by the British regulars, they continued sacking the town, camping the area in a diamond. A large portion of Howe's 13,000 desecrated the First Presbyterian Church of Westfield, slaughtering multitudes of livestock within it for a victorious banquet the night of June 26th. Before the British withdrawal the next morning, they relieved the church of its bell, the bell that they would take back to New York as a prize. Known for its splendid, unique ring strung on the first Sunday in New York, a British captive from Westfield, lawyer William Clark, heard his hometown bell and made his fellow captives aware that Westfield had been sacked, for that was the Westfield bell. The liquidation of the civilians of Westfield was total. At least 11,000 individual items were taken. The total estimation of damages cost the citizens of Westfield over £8,702. That equals $1.5 million in today's money. It is fair to say even more damages were not reported. A few hours after the British exit from Westfield, around 9 a.m., the 2nd New Jersey under Colonel Israel Shreve re-entered the town, and it was noted that many families were left without a morsel to eat. That single day in Westfield accounted for 18% of total damages in Essex County during the entirety of the Revolutionary War. The Battle of Short Hills, though technically a defeat with the colonials giving up the fields across Middlesex and Essex counties and retreating back to the fortified safety of the Watchung Mountains, in reality ended up as a positive as Washington didn't fall into General Howe's trap and created a situation that made it untenable for the British to reassert itself in New Jersey, leading Howe to pull back to Perth Amboy, then Staten Island, and prepare his troops to board ships to attack Philadelphia via sea, sailing up the Chesapeake Bay.